The cannon roared, and I swore my heart stopped not from the blast, but because I saw him again, silhouetted against the smoke, his Confederate gray a knife in my gut. How does a man swear an oath to his country when his soul is chained to the enemy? My name is Elias Kane, a corporal in the Union Army, 23 years old, with nothing but a faded photograph of my ma and a heart too stubborn to quit. Virginia, 1863, was a hell's cape of mud and blood, where ideals like freedom and honor got buried under bodies. I'd enlisted for the cause, for Lincoln's words, for something bigger than myself. But then I met Caleb Shaw, a rebel sharpshooter with a drawl that could melt iron and eyes that saw right through me. He was the enemy, the alpha to my omega, and the one thing I couldn't fight. It started 6 months ago, during a skirmish in the Shenandoah Valley. My squad was ambushed, pinned down in a gully by Confederate snipers. I was bleeding from a graze on my arm, cursing my luck, when I heard a rustle in the brush. I raised my rifle, ready to fire, but there he was, Caleb, not much older than me, his blonde hair catching the sunlight like a halo. He didn't shoot. He just stared, his blue eyes sharp but curious, like he was sizing up my soul instead of my uniform. "You're hit," he said, his voice low, steady, like he wasn't standing on the wrong side of the war. "Shoot me or move on," I snapped, my hands shaking. I wasn't afraid of death. I was afraid of how his gaze made my chest tighten, like he'd already claimed something I didn't know I had to give. He didn't shoot. He tossed me a strip of cloth from his pack gray, of course, and said, "Wrap it. Ain't no sense dyin' over a scratch." Then he was gone, melting into the trees like a ghost. I should have reported him. I should have hated him. Instead, I kept that cloth, stained with my blood and his mercy, tucked against my heart. Days turned to weeks, and we kept crossing paths, scouting missions, picket lines, moments when the war paused and the world held its breath. Each time, Caleb found me, or I found him. We didn't talk much at first, just traded glances, then words, then secrets. He told me about his farm in Georgia, how he joined the Confederacy to protect his family, not because he believed in their cause. I told him about my ma, how she'd raised me alone in Boston, how I'd promised her I'd come home whole. We were supposed to be enemies, but every stolen moment felt like a rebellion against the war itself. One night, under a sky heavy with stars, we met in a burned-out barn on neutral ground. The air smelled of ash and rain, and Caleb's hand brushed mine as he passed me a canteen. "You ever think about runnin'?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Leavin' all this behind?" "Every damn day," I admitted, my throat tight. "But where'd we go? Ain't no place for us." "Caleb, not like this." He stepped closer, his breath warm against my cheek. "There's always a place for what's real, Elias." And then he kissed me, fierce and desperate, like he could burn away the war with his touch. I kissed him back, my hands fisting in his jacket, my heart screaming that this was treason, but my soul shouting louder that it was home. For months, we stole moments like thieves hidden in ravines, behind supply wagons, in the fleeting safety of midnight. Each touch, each whispered promise, was a defiance of the flags we served. But the war didn't care about love. It chewed up men like us, spitting out bones and broken dreams. And when my captains started suspecting me, watching my every move, I knew our time was running out. One evening, as cannon fire rumbled in the distance, Caleb pulled me into the shadows of a crumbled stone wall. His eyes were wild, his voice urgent. "They're plannin' a big push tomorrow. Elias, your boys are walkin' into a trap. I heard my commander lay it out ambush at Cedar Creek. You gotta warn 'em." I froze, my blood turning to ice. You're a skin me to betray my side. I'm a skin you to save lives, he said, gripping my shoulders, including mine. I wanted to scream, to shove him away, to cling to the oath I'd sworn. But his eyes held me, steady and unyielding, and I knew I couldn't let him die. Not him. Not Caleb. That night, I slipped a coded message to my lieutenant, warning of the ambush without naming my source. It was a risk, a tightrope walk between loyalty and love. The next day, our regiment shifted plans, avoiding the trap. We won the skirmish, but I paid a price. My captain hauled me in, his face like thunder. Who's feedin' you rebel secrets? Kane. He growled. You're hiding something, and I'll find it. I kept my mouth shut, but the walls were closing in. Caleb and I were running out of shadows to hide in, and the war was about to force us to choose our flags or each other. The war didn't pause for traitors, and neither did my guilt. Every step I took felt like a betrayal off my men, my flag, or Caleb, depending on the hour. Captain Harrow's eyes followed me like a hawk's, sharp and unyielding. He was a man carved from duty, with a beard like iron filings and a temper to match. After the Cedar Creek warning, he doubled my patrols, assigned me to the front lines, as if daring me to crack. You're a good soldier, Kane, he said once, his voice low and suspicious. But good soldiers don't keep secrets. I nodded, my jaw tight, and prayed he'd never find the gray cloth tucked inside my coat. Caleb and I stole fewer moments now, each one riskier than the last. The war was heating up, battles growing bloodier, and the lines between North and South were drawn in iron. Yet every time I saw him, his lean frame slipping through the trees, his blue eyes catching mine like a spark, I forgot how to breathe. He was my rebellion, my sin, my salvation. One freezing night in October, we met in a copse of pines, the ground slick with frost. Caleb's breath clouded the air as he pulled me close, his hands rough but warm. I can't keep doing this, Elias, he whispered, his voice breaking. Sneakin' around, wonderin' if tomorrow's the day we shoot each other. Then stop, I said, my voice harsher than I meant. Go back to your lines, Caleb. Stay there. But even as I spoke, my hands gripped his jacket, pulling him closer, betraying every word. He laughed, a soft, bitter sound. You think I ain't tried? You're in my blood. Damn it. Ain't no leavin' you. We kissed then, hard and hungry, the kind of kiss that felt like a goodbye. His lips tasted of salt and smoke, and I wondered if this was what it felt like to drown. When we parted, he pressed his forehead to mine. There's talk of a big battle comin'. Antietam, they're sayin'. If we both make it through, we gotta find a way out. Together. Together, I echoed, but the word felt like a lie. How could we escape when the war owned us both? The next morning, Captain Harrow called me to his tent. His desk was littered with maps, his face grim. We've got intelligence on a rebel supply line, he said. You're leading a raid to cut it off. Tonight. My stomach twisted. Caleb had mentioned his unit was guarding supplies near Sharpsburg. I nodded, my throat dry, and left the tent with the weight of 2 wars on my shoulders. That night, under a moonless sky, I led my squad through the woods. My heart pounded, not from fear of the fight, but from the dread of what I might find. The raid was swift and brutal. Shots rang out. Men screamed, and I moved like a ghost, my rifle heavy in my hands. Then I saw him, Caleb, crouched behind a wagon, his face lit by muzzle flash. Our eyes met for a split second, and I saw the same terror in his gaze that churned in my gut. I froze, my finger on the trigger. One shot, and I could end him. End us. End the torment. But my hand wouldn't move. Instead, I shouted, "Fall back!" to my men, firing into the air to cover their retreat. The rebels scattered, and Caleb vanished into the dark. My squad escaped with minimal losses, but I knew I'd crossed a line. I'd chosen him over my duty. When we returned to camp, Harrow was waiting. "You let him slip away," he growled, his eyes boring into mine. "Why?" "Bad call." I lied, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Won't happen again." He didn't believe me. I could see it in the way his jaw tightened, the way he dismissed me with a curt nod. I was running out of time, and Caleb was running out of luck. The next time we met, Caleb's face was bruised, his eyes haunted. "They're on to me too," he said, his voice low. "My sergeant thinks I'm leaking information. If they catch us, Elias, it's a noose for both of us." "Then we run," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "After Antietam, we desert. Head west, where no one knows us." He stared at me, his eyes searching mine. "You'd give up everything for me." "I already have," I admitted, my voice raw. He pulled me into his arms, and for a moment, the war didn't exist. Just us, two broken soldiers dreaming of a life that might never be ours. Antietam was a slaughterhouse, and I was drowning in it. The air reeked of gunpowder and death, and every scream reminded me that Caleb was out there, fighting for the wrong side. September 17th, 1863. Dawned bloody. The battle was chaos, men falling like wheat under a scythe. Fields soaked red, the air thick with smoke. I fought mechanically, my rifle an extension of my arm. But my mind was on Caleb. Was he still alive? Had he taken a bullet meant for me? The thought gnawed at me, sharper than any bayonet. By noon, my squad was pinned near a sunken road the men called Bloody Lane. Bodies piled high, and I crouched behind a fence, reloading, when I saw him, Caleb, across the field, his gray uniform stained with dirt and blood. He was aiming, his face set in a mask of focus. But then his eyes found mine. For a heartbeat, the war stopped. Just him and me, two souls caught in a storm. I don't know what made me do it, instinct, love, or madness, but I broke cover, sprinting toward him. Bullets whizzed past, my men shouting my name, but I didn't care. I tackled Caleb into a ditch, both of us tumbling into the mud. "What the hell are you doing?" he hissed, his eyes wide with fear and fury. "Savon you," I gasped, my hands checking him for wounds. He was whole, thank God, but the blood on his coat wasn't his. "You gotta get out of here, Caleb. This ain't a fight we can win." He grabbed my face, his fingers digging into my jaw. "And you think I'd leave you? Damn it, Elias, we're in this together." Before I could argue, a shell exploded nearby, showering us with dirt. We scrambled deeper into the ditch, pressed close, our breaths mingling. "If we die here," he whispered, "I'm glad it's with you." "Don't talk like that," I snapped, my voice cracking. "We're getting out. We promised." The battle raged on, but we stayed hidden, waiting for a break in the fighting. When night fell, we slipped away, moving like shadows through the carnage. We didn't speak, just ran, our hands brushing as we navigated the woods. By dawn, we were miles from the battlefield, holed up in an abandoned mill. The war felt distant, but the danger was closer than ever. Caleb's hands were shaking as he lit a small fire. "They'll come for us," he said, his voice hollow. "Deserters don't get mercy." "Then we keep moving," I said, pulling him close. West, like we planned. California, maybe. Somewhere they can't find us. He looked at me, his eyes soft but scared. You really think we can outrun this? I think we have to try, I said, kissing him gently, pouring every ounce of hope I had left into that moment. For a week, we traveled by night, stealing food from farms, sleeping in barns or under trees. Every rustle in the dark made my heart race. But Caleb's presence kept me steady. He was my anchor, my reason, my everything. But the war wasn't done with us. One night, as we crossed a river, we heard hoofs patrols. Union or Confederate. It didn't matter. They were hunting deserters. We dove into the water, the cold biting our skin, and hid under a bridge. Caleb's teeth chattered, but he grinned, his hand finding mine. Romantic, ain't it? He whispered, and I laughed despite myself, the sound muffled by the roar of the river. When the patrols passed, we climbed out, soaked and shivering, but alive. We're gonna make it, I told him, my voice fierce. I swear it. He nodded, but his eyes were distant, like he could see the noose waiting for us both. Freedom was a lie we told ourselves to keep running. The farther we got from Antietam, the heavier the truth weighed. There was no escaping the war. Not for men like us. We were in Pennsylvania now, skulking through backwoods and avoiding towns. Caleb's optimism was fading, his jokes fewer, his silences longer. I felt it too, the gnawing fear that we were chasing a dream that didn't exist. But every time I looked at him, his blonde hair catching the moonlight, his hand warm in mine, I remembered why we were running. Not just from the war, but toward something better. Toward us. One night, we stumbled into a Quaker farm, the kind of place that felt like it belonged to a different world. The couple who owned it, Amos and Ruth, took us in without questions. They fed us, gave us clean clothes, and let us sleep in their barn. You're safe here, Ruth said, her eyes kind but knowing. I wondered how much she guessed about us. Two ragged soldiers with no papers and too much fear in our eyes. Caleb and I lay in the hayloft, the scent of straw and warmth wrapping around us. This could be it, he murmured, his head on my chest. A life like this, quiet, just you and me. I wanted to believe him, but the war was still out there, and so were the men hunting us. We can't stay, I said, my voice tight. They'll find us. He lifted his head, his eyes fierce. Then let them. I'd rather die with you than go back to that hell. Don't, I whispered, pulling him close. Don't talk like that. We're gonna live, Caleb. We're gonna have that life. He kissed me then, slow and deep, like he was sealing a promise. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope flicker, fragile but real. But hope is a cruel thing in wartime. The next morning, as we helped Amos with chores, hoofbeats thundered down the road. A Union patrol, led by Captain Harrow himself. My blood ran cold as he dismounted, his eyes locking on me. Elias Kane, he said, his voice like a blade. You're a hard man to find. Caleb stepped forward, his jaw set, but I grabbed his arm. Don't, I hissed. Let me handle this. Harrow's gaze flicked to Caleb, then back to me. You and your friend here are deserters. You know the penalty. They're just boys. Ruth interjected, her voice steady. Let 'em go, Captain. Ain't no harm in mercy. Harrow's face hardened. Mercy's for men who honor their oaths. He signaled his men, and they moved to surround us. Caleb's hand tightened on mine, his eyes blazing. Run, he whispered, but I shook my head. Running now would only get us shot. Instead, I stepped forward, my heart pounding. "Take me," I said. "He's got nothing to do with this." "Elias." "No." Caleb's voice broke, but I didn't look at him. Couldn't. Harrow studied me, his eyes narrowing. "You'd take the noose for him." "If it means he lives," I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. For a moment, I thought Harrow might agree, but then Caleb lunged, tackling one of the soldiers, and chaos erupted. Shots rang out. Amos shouted, and I threw myself at Caleb, shielding him as we hit the ground. When the dust settled, Harrow's men had us both in irons, dragging us toward a wagon. As we were loaded up, Caleb's eyes met mine, full of pain and defiance. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Don't be," I said, my voice raw. "You're worth it." The cell was a stone box, cold and damp, with bars that mocked our dreams of freedom. Caleb's hand found mine through the dark, and I held on like he was the only thing keeping me alive. They'd taken us to a Union stockade in Maryland, a grim fortress where deserters and prisoners awaited judgment. Harrow had made it clear we'd face a court-martial, and the penalty for desertion was death. Every creak of the door made my heart lurch, expecting the guards to drag us to the gallows. But worse than the fear was the guilt. I dragged Caleb into this, and now we were both paying the price. "They'll hang us together," Caleb said one night, his voice low but steady. "Ain't that something?" I laughed, a choked, desperate sound. "You're a damn fool, Shaw." "Fool for you," he said, squeezing my hand. Even in that hellhole, he could make me feel like the world was worth fighting for. Days blurred into weeks, the monotony broken only by interrogations. Harrow questioned me relentlessly, trying to pry out the truth about Caleb. "He's a rebel," he'd say, his voice dripping with disgust. "You're throwing your life away for a traitor." "He's a man," I shot back once, my temper flaring. "More loyal than you'll ever know." Harrow's eyes narrowed, but he didn't push further. I think he knew, deep down, that he'd never break me. Not when it came to Caleb. One night, a guard slipped us a note. It was from Ruth, smuggled through God knows how. "Help is coming. Hold on." I showed it to Caleb, and his eyes lit up, a spark of hope in the gloom. "Quakers don't lie," he said. "Maybe we got a chance." The chance came sooner than we expected. Late one night, a commotion erupted outside. Shouts, hoofbeats, the crack of gunfire. The cell door swung open, and Amos stood there, his face grim but determined. "Move," he whispered, tossing us a key. We didn't hesitate. We unlocked our chains, grabbed our chance, and ran. Outside, a group of Quakers and abolitionists had staged a diversion, setting fire to a supply shed. In the chaos, we slipped into the woods, Amos leading us to a safe house deep in the forest. There, we caught our breath, our hands still shaking from the escape. "Why'd you do it?" I asked Amos, my voice rough. "You don't even know us." "Love's worth Savon," he said simply, and I felt my throat tighten. Caleb pulled me aside, his eyes searching mine. "We're free, Elias. But it ain't over. They'll keep hunting us." "Then we keep running," I said, my voice fierce. "Together." He nodded, his hand cupping my face. "Always." We spent weeks in hiding, moving from safe house to safe house, guided by a network of people who believed in something bigger than the war. Each night, Caleb and I grew closer, our bond forged in fear and hope. We talked about the future California, a farm, a life where no one cared who we loved. It was a dream, but it kept us going. One evening, in a small cabin in Ohio, Caleb pulled me into his arms. "I don't care if we're running forever," he said, his voice soft. "Long as I'm with you, I'm home." I kissed him, pouring every ounce of my soul into it. And for the first time, I believed we might actually make it. The road west was long, and every mile felt like a prayer. But with Caleb by my side, even the uncertainty tasted like hope. Ohio gave way to Indiana, then Illinois, each state a step closer to freedom. We traveled as farmhands, using false names, our uniforms long discarded. Caleb's laugh, once rare, came easier now, and I lived for the moments when his blue eyes crinkled with mischief. But the war's shadow lingered. We avoided towns, kept our heads down, and never stayed anywhere too long. One night, in a barn outside Springfield, we lay in each other's arms, the stars visible through a hole in the roof. "You ever think about what we'll do when we get there?" Caleb asked, his fingers tracing patterns on my chest. "Build a cabin," I said, my voice soft. "Grow corn. Maybe get a dog. Something simple." He chuckled. "Simple's good. Long as you're there." I turned to him, my heart full. "I ain't going anywhere, Caleb." But fate had other plans. The next morning, we were ambushed not by soldiers, but by bounty hunters. They'd been tracking us, tipped off by someone we'd trusted. We fought, but there were too many. They bound us, threw us into a cart, and hauled us toward a Union outpost. My heart sank as I realized we'd been so close, only to lose it all. At the outpost, we were separated, locked in different cells. I could hear Caleb's voice through the wall, steady but strained. "Stay strong, Elias," he called. "We ain't done yet." I wanted to believe him, but despair was creeping in. The officer in charge, a grizzled major named Collins, interrogated me first. "You've caused a lot of trouble, Kane," he said, his voice cold. "But I'm willin' to make a deal. Give up your rebel friend, and I'll see you get a lighter sentence." "Go to hell," I spat, my hands clenched. "I'd rather die than betray Caleb." Collins sighed, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "You're throwing your life away for nothing. He's the enemy." "He's my family," I said, my voice breaking. "More than you'll ever understand." The interrogation went nowhere, and I was thrown back into my cell. But that night, something changed. A guard, a young private with kind eyes, slipped me a key. "There's folks who believe in you," he whispered. "Get out, and don't look back." I didn't question it. I freed myself, then Caleb, and we ran, stealing horses from the outpost stable. The night was alive with shouts and gunfire, but we rode hard, the wind in our faces, our hearts pounding in sync. By dawn, we were deep in the wilderness, free again, but the cost was heavy. We were marked men now, with no one to trust but each other. Caleb pulled his horse close to mine, his eyes fierce. "We're gonna make it, Elias. I swear it." I nodded, my throat tight. Together. The West was a promise, but promises break easy when you're running from a noose. Caleb and I were ghosts now, haunting the edges of a country tearing itself apart. We crossed into Kansas, then Nebraska, living off the land and the kindness of strangers who didn't ask too many questions. Caleb's strength kept me going, his quiet confidence a balm to my doubts. But the fear never left us. Every stranger could be a hunter, every town a trap. One evening, in a small settlement near the Platte River, we found work as laborers on a ranch. The owner, a widow named Clara, didn't care about our pasts. Work hard. And you're welcome, she said, her eyes sharp but kind. We threw ourselves into the labor, grateful for the chance to breathe. At night, we'd sit by the river, watching the water catch the moonlight. Caleb would talk about his childhood, his dreams of a simple life, and I'd listen, memorizing every word. You're my home, Elias, he said one night, his voice soft. Don't matter where we are. I kissed him, slow and deep, the world fading away. For the first time, I let myself believe we could have this peace. Love, a future. But peace is fragile. A week later, a group of men rode into the settlement bounty hunters, their faces hard, their eyes scanning. Clara warned us, giving us horses and supplies. Go, she said, and don't come back. We rode west, pushing the horses to their limits. The hunters were close, their shouts echoing through the night. We lost them in a canyon, hiding in a cave as their lanterns passed by. Caleb's arms wrapped around me, his breath warm against my neck. We're gonna be okay, he whispered, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. The next morning, we found a small homestead, abandoned but intact. It was a risk, but we were exhausted, our bodies and spirits worn thin. We stayed, fixing up the place, pretending for a few days that it was ours. We laughed, cooked, made love under the stars, and for a moment, the war felt like a distant memory. But the hunters found us. They came at dawn, their guns drawn, their voices cold. Elias Kane, Caleb Shaw, their leader barked, "You're under arrest." Caleb moved to fight, but I grabbed his arm. "No," I said, my voice steady. "We're done running." He looked at me, his eyes wide with fear and love. "Elias, trust me," I whispered, squeezing his hand. We surrendered, our hands raised, our hearts heavy. But as they bound us, I saw something in the Distancia group of riders. Not soldiers, but civilians, Quakers, abolitionists, people who'd heard our story. They surrounded the hunters, their voices calm but firm, demanding our release. Outnumbered and outmaneuvered, the hunters backed down, leaving us with warnings but no chains. The leader of the group, a woman named Hannah, took us to a safe house. "You've got friends you don't even know," she said, smiling. "Rest. You're safe now." That night, Caleb and I held each other, tears mixing with laughter. We were alive, together, and for the first time, I believed we might actually win. The war ended, but our battle didn't. Freedom was a fragile thing, built on trust and the stubborn will to keep going. We settled in California, in a small valley where the mountains stood guard and the world felt far away. The network that saved us helped us start over new names. A small plot of land, a chance to be the men we wanted to be. Elias Kane and Caleb Shaw became Eli and Cal, farmers with calloused hands and hearts that beat as one. Our days were simple but full. We built a cabin, planted crops, and adopted a scruffy dog we named Hope. At night, we'd sit on the porch, Caleb's head on my shoulder, watching the stars. "This is it," he'd say, his voice soft. "The life we dreamed of." "It's better," I'd reply, kissing his temple. "Because it's real." The war's scars lingered nightmares, moments when a stranger's face made us flinch. But we faced them together, our love a shield against the past. We didn't talk much about the flags we'd once served, but we honored the men we'd been by living honestly, loving fiercely. One spring, as the valley bloomed with wildflowers, Caleb took my hand and led me to a hill overlooking our land. "I got something to say," he said, his blue eyes shining. He pulled out a ring, simple but sturdy, carved from wood. I ain't got much, Elias, but I got you. Will you stay with me? Always. Tears stung my eyes as I nodded. Always, Caleb. We didn't need a preacher or a crowd. We exchanged rings under the open sky. Our vows whispered to the wind. The world might not understand us, but it didn't matter. We'd fought for this, bled for this, and no one could take it away. Years passed, and our love grew stronger, rooted in the soil we worked. We became part of the community, known not as soldiers or deserters, but as Eli and Cal, the men who loved each other and their land. The war faded into history, but our story, our rebellion, our sacrifice, our triumph lived on in every touch, every smile, every quiet moment. One evening, as we sat by the fire, Caleb looked at me, his hair streaked with gray, his eyes still as bright as the day we met. You ever regret it? He asked. Choosing me over the flag. I took his hand, feeling the weight of the ring he'd made me. My loyalty was to the flag, Caleb, but my soul, that's always been yours. He smiled, pulling me close, and we kissed, the fire crackling beside us. The war was over, the world was changing, and we were home. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.